Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
The United States government is putting us in an untenable situation. What's getting ready to happen in this country is not sustainable. In fact, that's putting it mildly. What's getting ready to happen in this country will result in an all-out revolution. And the American government, along with its feckless politicians, they are fueling the seeds of this revolution. I am not speaking in hyperbole. I'm not speaking in the terms of political revolution vis-a-vis Bernie Sanders. I am talking about a full-on revolt against the government that has abdicated its responsibility to protect its citizens' life. We're not even at the point where we're asking the government to provide us the ability to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're at the point where the government is actively behaving in a manner that is going to get us killed. We have seen an explosion in COVID-19 cases, but that's just the beginning. You know that part. We are at the beginning now across the country where evictions are going to start happening in the hundreds of thousands. New York City alone is expecting 50,000 eviction cases before the courts this week. July marks the month where all of the moratoriums on evictions are over. And people are going to be put out into the elements without jobs. 45 million Americans are unemployed. And the federal government, along with Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, all of the ruling elite, they are playing games with something I don't think they understand very clearly. Because if the American people ever get to a place where they are hungry, just one time, just let this get to the point where more people don't know how they're going to feed their kids than currently don't know how to feed their kids. Wait till that middle class, lower middle class people who have been living in the delusion of the American dream. There's a segment of society that has already understood what it is to go to bed hungry all their lives. But you wait until this lower middle class segment of people who are supposed to go back to teach school in the fall, but they probably won't be able to. So then the question is, how are they going to get paid when the federal government and state governments have refused to do anything to provide a baseline of survival for its citizens? What good is this government? And we are caught up in the absurdity of all of the madness that comes from the white supremacist in chief in the White House. We are caught up in the absurdity of all of our regular politics day to day, the ignorance, the stupidity, the pettiness, and we are lurking. What is looming rather right in front of us is a level of destruction that I don't think the rulers of this country believe will come to them. I'm extremely upset right now, and everyone should be, because we are getting ready to head into the second part, not the second phase or the second wave. The second part of this crisis is when people realize that this is going to be a long-term endeavor. And then they start to wonder, how am I going to survive when I was laid off, 45 million people laid off, and unemployment benefits are running out soon? If we are lucky, the government will do some type of patchwork to help people survive for just another 3 months. And I say that, and I don't mean it sarcastically. I mean if we're lucky. Because if we're not lucky, they will continue to ignore their responsibility to the people who give them the consent to govern. And if they continue to ignore it, then we haven't seen anything yet. You thought the uprisings out of Minneapolis were something. You thought the uprisings over the murder of George Floyd were something. Wait until families are hungry. Wait until families are putting their loved ones outside the front door, wrapped in sheets, because the hospitals are overwhelmed. You think I'm being hyperbolic? You think I'm exaggerating? Already in Arizona, the governor has issued an order that gives the hospitals the right to choose who lives and who dies. This is no exaggeration. In Florida alone, since Friday, over 30,000 people have been infected with COVID-19. Now consider how many people, how many more have been exposed from those 30,000. What's happening in Florida is happening around the country. And yet we still have a government that is, completely just left us out here to figure this out on our own. Completely left us out here without any long-term solution. I imagine the rest of the world is looking at America like, what in the world is wrong? You know what's wrong? Do you know what is wrong with America? It is the fact that we are more committed to the profit margins of the ruling elite than we are the lives of the people. That is at the core of it. That is at the core of it. Even now, as a treatment for COVID-19 has been developed by Gilead, the pharmaceutical company. Gilead took $70 million from the federal government to develop this treatment. It's not even a vaccine. It's merely a treatment. And they are getting ready to charge Americans $3,000 for this treatment. Whereas in other countries, they're charging as low as $2,000, and they've offered a generic version in other countries that will only charge $600. And so the problem in America is that this country, the government has always been willing to use Americans as fodder for this capitalistic system. Fodder for its imperialism. Fodder for the profit margins of the ruling elite. And here we are getting ready to go into July, and thousands of people are getting ready to be evicted because the government saw fit to put trillions of dollars into the hands of the markets, into the hands of billionaires, into the hands of corporations, and gave Americans $1,200 and said, figure it out. But on top of that, the government refused to do what was necessary to halt the spread of this virus. It has been both insult to injury, salt in the wound. The government has not given anyone enough to be able to shelter in place, but they have also not instituted any policies that kept people from spreading this. I don't think most people understand what's coming. And this is not to be alarmist. This is just soberly sitting down and looking further ahead than the next week. And if you project out into August and consider the fact that schools will not be opened again, and you think about the compounding impact of this, the reality that a lot of teachers may very well not get paid. Do you not think that this government, the way the governments have behaved, do you not believe that if the majority of students begin homeschooling, which is it is a likelihood. It's not just a possibility. It is a likelihood that the majority of Americans will be homeschooling their kids beginning in the fall. Do you not think that the states would not seize that opportunity to break teachers? At a minimum, they're going to cut their salaries. At a minimum, if we don't do something about it. And then if you just soberly take a minute and project out, this is going to put the families of essential workers in harm's way, at great risk, because essential workers are not going to be able to homeschool their children. So who is going to take care of homeschooling the children of essential workers? Have you considered that? Have you considered it? But has the federal government actually considered what is going to be necessary for us to survive this thing? And by survive, I mean not have a complete breakdown in our society. Because what the government is doing, what Donald Trump is doing, what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are sitting by acting like, oh, I don't know how we can stop this. I don't know what we can do. It's not like we have the actual power of the Congress. Everyone who is in power has completely abdicated their responsibility to the people. And as soon as enough people can't figure out how to feed their kids, if we get to that level, I'm not saying this as a threat, I'm saying this as a warning. What's coming around the bend is going to be 50, 60 million people without jobs. Essential workers without the ability to educate their children, because everyone is going to be homeschooling in the fall, because nobody is going to be able to open back up and send their kids to these incubators, these petri dishes that schools always were. Every sickness we ever had in our house came from school. No one is going to send their kids, but that puts an entire segment of our society at risk of not being able to get their children educated at all. And then what is the plan for teachers? Because if there's not a plan for teachers, you can guarantee that these state governments are going to attack the wages of those teachers. And then what is the plan for the 45 million people who are currently unemployed? Are we going to insist that if you insist that people have to go out into a pandemic that is getting ready to be exponentially worse, you've got something else coming to you, and I don't think you understand the extent of it, government. The ignorance that surrounds the COVID-19 and the outbreak, people refusing to wear masks, that is just the beginning. It is, and in fact, it's not the beginning, it's already happened. The spread of COVID-19 is growing at a rate that is uncontrollable, particularly in the United States. And the only thing that we can do at this point is to shelter in place. People cannot be forced to go out into a pandemic that was exacerbated by the government, because the government will not provide a living wage for people to survive and consume and pay their rent and pay their mortgage. The government has exacerbated the situation because it was just completely irresponsible. The number of people who are getting ready to die falls directly at the feet of this government, directly at the feet of Donald Trump. But I'm sorry, it also falls at the feet of the Democratic Party, because where is the opposition? Where are the leaders who are standing up to this government, this regime, Donald Trump, his administration, demanding that we do something, not stopping until something is done? This piecemeal, this patchwork legislation that dropped a few dollars in people's pockets was woefully insufficient. And now we're going to see hundreds of thousands of evictions across this country. I'm sorry, what do you expect people to do? What do you expect a father and a mother to do when they have not been able to work And the government has not given them anything to survive on. But yet the government did everything that was necessary for the virus to spread even further. And so now that that family has been evicted and they have no place to stay, they are going out into the elements, and probably if they're lucky to get a homeless shelter, they stand a chance of being infected from COVID-19 at that homeless shelter. Do you see what the government has done to the American people? We cannot win. We cannot get a break. There's no move that the average American can make who is suffering from a lack of income, because this government has made sure that every route that that individual or that family takes is one that leads to devastation. And it's yet to hit all of us who are at home comfortably. So many of our jobs are able to be worked remotely and to be able to work from home. And so most of us have been enjoying a peaceful respite from the madness that's going on around us, and we're still able to pay our bills. But there is a huge percentage of Americans who cannot pay their bills because their jobs are gone. And while 45 million, do you know how many people, 45 million people, that you know how big that is? How many families, if you take in consideration the families of them, we're talking about at least 70 to 80, 90 million people who do not have income, and soon they will not have a place to stay because the governments have not extended into perpetuity until this virus is over. They have not extended a moratorium on evictions. COVID-19 is class warfare. And we need to understand that those of us who are at home, working from home, safely from home, that if we don't have solidarity and fight on behalf of the people who are the most vulnerable because of COVID-19, then we are on the side of the oppressor. What has to be done is the same thing that I said, I don't know how many months ago, back in February. I said this must be done. Number one, the federal government must institute a nationwide, in conjunction with the governors, there must be a nationwide moratorium on rent, evictions, and a nationwide moratorium on mortgages. Period. There must be a suspension of all debt collection. No one should lose any property because of this. Repossessions of cars must stop. The federal government must pay out every month enough money for households to be sustained throughout the entirety of this pandemic. Essential workers must be paid hazard pay, but even more so, essential workers need to be provided the assurance that anyone who is outside of their home is wearing a mask. Mask must be mandatory if you leave your home across the nation. We do not have time to play games with the morons of our society who have bogged us down with meaningless, fatuous debates over whether or not a mask is unpatriotic, whether or not a mask actually helps. We do not have time for people who willingly ignore science for whatever reason. They are going to scream regardless. They are going to cry foul regardless. There's nothing that we can do that is going to stop the political backlash of a bunch of morons who feel it more important for them to revel in their stupidity at the expense of hundreds of thousands of lives. We don't have time for it. And if you're worried about the political ramifications of what is going to happen to you on election day because you institute a moratorium on rent, because you issued a mandate for people to wear masks, if you're more concerned about the political ramifications, then you do not deserve to be a leader in this moment. If you cannot do what is morally correct at the expense of your political career, then you were never the type of leader that should have been in office in the first place. You are more concerned about election day, about politics, than you are the number of people who are going to die because you were too cowardly to issue an order for mandatory masks and to shut down the bars and to shut down the gyms. This government on every level is pushing the American people to the point of breaking. We are at a breaking point, and it's only going to get worse because of every decision that this government made and because no one stood up to the recklessness of this government. There has to be some reckoning. There has to be. Here's a diagnosis. The diagnosis is simple but disturbing. The federal government has abandoned all responsibility to the people. The federal government has abandoned all responsibility to protecting the lives of the people. And so what we have to do is do it ourselves. We cannot wait on the federal government to do, or the state governments, or our city governments, or local governments. We cannot wait on any of them to do the responsible thing because they have shown that they are completely irresponsible. Completely, entirely irresponsible. Not only are they irresponsible in the sense of doing what causes, like actively instituting policies that spread COVID-19, but they've abdicated any responsibility to care for the people that lost their jobs. The people who can't pay their rent because their hours were rolled back. The people who are genuinely struggling right now. And this has happened at every level with both parties. And so what has to happen is that we have to take care of ourselves. We may not be financially able to provide for everyone, but what we certainly can do is to take steps to ensure that we don't increase the spread of this pandemic. That's the best thing that we could do at this point. We cannot wait on what we can do is allow the morons to go out and spread it amongst themselves. Basically, that's all we have, right? Allow the morons because they're not going to listen to anyone. They're going to rebel. They want to rebel because someone wants to make them wear a mask. Then fine. Go ahead, Karen. Go ahead, Cleotis. Go ahead and out into the pandemic. And when somebody close to you dies because of you, don't expect any concern or sympathy from us because we are going to be sheltering in place as much as we can. And for those of you who have to go out, as always, as I keep saying, I know you probably are tired of me saying it, but put your personal health and protection above your job, above anything else. I don't care how. I don't care if you got to yell at somebody, tell them to get the hell back. Your health is more important than whatever you're delivering to their doorstep.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruption.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. A very special welcome to Sheena Costa. Thank you for becoming a patron. Ali Al-Saba. Thank you for becoming a patron. Shelby Lordy. Thank you for becoming a patron. Matthew McGranahan. Thank you for becoming a patron. Everybody just bop your head. Sergio Aguayo, I'm sorry. Thank you for becoming a patron. Vince, thank you for becoming a patron. Katie Faye, thank you for becoming a patron. And last but not least, my homeboy from high school, Day One, Square One, Skits Bebo, thank you for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut interviews, none of the commercial advertisements, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Yep. Here we go. Oh, just came in. Very special welcome to Danielle Merriweather. Just came in as a patron, like literally just now. And listen, there's so much that we have to talk about. And I'm sorry, I just had to let that off my chest. The first 3 segments of today's show I know was kind of intense, but we are facing some very precarious times. And I know that we need to be able to find a way to survive this. I think what we're seeing is a separation of our society, where those of us who know better and want to do better, we have to literally come out from among those people who are just being intentionally obtuse, people who are engaging in bad faith, people who are willing to put capitalism above the lives of the people. And we have to find a way to survive on our own, because the government has let us down. And until such time we can replace this government, even if it's through just the electoral process, until such time that we can get these dangerous bastards out of office that are leading to the death of so many people, we have to take care of ourselves. So I need you to take this extremely seriously. Don't let up. Double your efforts, triple your efforts. If you've been staying at home, stay home even harder. Wash your groceries even more. Tip your grocery worker extra good, because they are literally putting their lives on the line. There should better not be a person who's listening to me who is not tipping their grocery worker at least 30%. At least. They are risking their lives to bring you groceries. And then we need to use all of the time that we have available to us and put relentless pressure on our elected officials to let them know that we see everything that they're doing. More importantly, we see what they're not doing, and that we are going to make them pay the price, the political price, because they abandoned us. They left us out here to fend for ourselves, when the responsible thing to do for any government, we've seen it across the globe, we just haven't seen it in America, because America has been willing to sacrifice millions of Americans on the altar of capitalism. And we need to let these elected officials know that we are going to vote every single one of them out of office. And until the time that we can actually do that, take care of your brother, take care of your sister, take care of your non-gender conforming individuals in your life. And you know what I'm doing differently? I'm saving my breath. I'm not going to engage in arguments with people who are being intentionally obtuse. They're not going to learn. They're not going to learn their lesson until somebody who they care about dies from this. And I've not been able to fact check these. I try to fact check this one particular story of a woman whose child died from supposedly died from COVID-19, and instead of being having a change of heart and a change of mind, she celebrated the fact that they were able to go out to restaurants leading up to her getting sick with COVID-19, and that was a level of freedom. And I want to make sure I say that clearly. I have seen at least one instance of a family who lost their child to COVID-19, so committed to this liberty of being able to go out to restaurants without masks, that instead of mourning their child and relenting and changing their mind, they doubled down on happiness because they were able to take that child out to the restaurant where she probably got COVID-19. And so even in some cases, there are going to be people who are so committed to their ideology and their dogma that even the death of a loved one won't change them. And so to that end, I suggest to you, save your energy and save who you can. Don't spend your energy. Don't expend your energy, your life force, your resources, your time trying to convince morons who are committed more to their ideology than even the safety of their own family. Tell 10 people that you know will listen to redouble their efforts to shelter in place. And most importantly, while we are sheltering in place, let every single person in this government know that we are coming for their political heads, and we will not stop until they pay the political price for abdicating their responsibility to protect the people. Patrons, stay tuned.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.